good day to you this day of your time. How are you all?
Perfect.
Allow us to begin this interaction once again by thanking each and every one of you for establishing this link through this gate at this time. Once again, each and every time we are afforded an opportunity to interact with any and all of you, it expands our understanding of creation and allows us to interact and experience with that many more facets of the infinite. So we thank you for your gift. We would like to begin this flow of information with an idea that we have discussed before, but not from this point of view. An idea that we have begun to discuss with a few of you recently in a new way. We will be presenting this idea a few of the upcoming interactions, for we recognize at this timing it is important to do so. Now that certain foundations have been laid in your consciousness, not only through these interactions, but in other sources of information that you have all access to, we can now present another perspective in terms of delivering information that has been around on your planet for thousands of years. But we recognize that because of the different belief systems that exist upon your planet within each and every individual, and the different belief systems that exist upon your planet within different cultures, it may be necessary sometimes, because of your upbringing, to hear something over and 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 over again, until finally you are not just hearing it, but really listening to it. And perhaps in that sense it finally, as you say, clicks within you. You finally, as you say in your language, get it, and you finally incorporate the actual feeling of the experience of the idea within you and in your daily life from that point forward, rather than just running the words around in your mind. So we will endeavor to present to you, yes, once again, an idea we have talked about before and has been available to your society for quite some time, but perhaps not presented in quite this way. And we will continue to do this until you say you understand. For we feel this is critical at this time, that you do understand this notion. And again, this may not be the way, what we are about to present to you, that some of you will necessarily understand it. Do not despair if this is not the case. Many of you will. And those that need or require another methodology by which to understand and finally, ultimately incorporate this concept into their consciousness will absolutely and automatically always attract it into their lives exactly when they need it. So, let us begin. We have discussed many times the concept of living in the moment. You have heard this over and over again in your society. Be here now. The idea of being at one with. The idea of being the experience. Of knowing that you are your reality, that you create your reality, that it is you, you are it. Let us approach this now from a slightly different direction and offer once again, and those that have heard this before, remember, you can stand hearing it again. For this is a technique you can practice until you know it is yours, until you own it. And this technique is as follows. It has to do, primarily, this approach, with understanding what the whole concept of naming yourself is all about. For we recognize that in many of the societies that exist upon your planet, you have in essence forgotten what your names mean. The idea is that there are still cultures upon your planet that are, in naming themselves, a little bit closer to the idea of living in the moment, being in the now. They recognize this in the manner of the naming, even though they may even still, some of them, freeze, so to speak, the name of a person. But the essence of the idea in the naming may still be there as follows. To use as a reference, to use as an analogy, we will call upon the idea of what you call your Native American culture and remind you of how many of them, in that sense, name themselves. And we will, again, because of the commonality that exists in your society, call upon another analogy, what you call the film that most of you are familiar with, called in your name Dances with Wolves. Most of you are familiar with this, yes.
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 Recognize that this is, in that sense, the name of the individual, but look at what kind of a name it is. Dances with wolves. It is the naming of an experience that the person is having. And they are called by the experience that they are having. But more than that, you must understand, living in the moment requires that you fully recognize that experiences are not something you actually have. They are what you are. They are who you are at that moment that you are experiencing. The idea, therefore, is to recognize that in truth, instead of freezing the name, every moment, whatever it is you are experiencing, is who you are. The distinction that needs to be made within your consciousness, and the technique that you can practice to live in the moment, is to constantly remind yourself that what it is, formerly you would have thought would be something you were doing, what it is, formerly you would have thought would have been an experience that you are having, can now be seen to be simply who you are at the moment. So, and again, in connection to the reference of the name of Dances with Wolves, right now, in your own way, of course, not meaning that you lose your individuality in this, but just as a generality, right now, your names, who you are, literally, is listening to Bashar. That's who you are. It's not what you're doing. It's who you are. You are, your name is, listening to Bashar. In the same way that you have the name Dances with Wolves. When you do anything, that is your name, that is who you are at the moment. So again, for example, if you are driving your car, that's who you are, not what you're doing. As you are behind the wheel of your car and you are driving to any particular location, that is who you are. In terms of the locations, perhaps, that exist around what you call your Los Angeles area. Again, if you are driving to Santa Monica, that's who you are, not what you're doing. When you're doing it, that's who you are. You can say to yourself, I am driving to Santa Monica. That's who I am, not what I'm doing. I am looking at the car next to me. That's who I am, not a thing I am doing. I am thinking about something I did yesterday. That's who I am. Compact it. Let it bring you into the moment. When you use it as your name, it will bring you into the moment. I am thinking about what I did yesterday. It automatically, when you encapsulate it as a name, brings you into the moment and allows you to recognize that the act itself is discrete and valid by itself without actually having to make a connection to the past or a connection or a projection to the future, which brings about expectation and assumption and many other methodologies that cause segregation and separation within your consciousness. So when you are driving to Santa Monica and that's who you are at that moment, that's it, there's nothing else. That is totally who you are. I am driving to Santa Monica. Everything that's going on, every car you see, every space between you is a part of who you are at that moment. And when you think of yourself this way and practice doing so, you will see, so absorbed in everything that's going on, because all of a sudden you realize that everything that's going on is actually who you are, that all of a sudden all your thoughts of what it is you're supposed to expect when you get to Santa Monica will vanish. You will simply be totally, at that moment, driving to Santa Monica and have no thought about anything until you are being in Santa Monica, which is a different person. When you start to practice the idea of seeing this way, seeing yourself this way, literally, at every moment, by paying attention to the first verb in the chain in the sentence, the first verb is who you are. So, for example, if you are playing baseball, that's who you are, not what you're doing. And then the next day you are remembering having played baseball, in that sense, you are at that moment remembering having played baseball. That's who you are, not the idea of actually focusing on the past. Right now, in the present, who you are is remembering having played baseball. That's totally who you are. And that's it, at that moment. You fill the moment by being the first verb in the sentence chain, not the second. So again, understand the profundity of this, because if there are such things that you are making connections to that you do not prefer, then recognize that by using this technique, in one moment you may be saying, I am experiencing sadness. That's who I am. In the next moment, you may recognize that you are pondering why you might have experienced sadness. But if you understand this concept, then as soon as you know you are pondering why I am sad, you are literally no longer experiencing sadness. You are now pondering why you are sad, and immediately you are no longer being in sadness. You are now another person. When you start to practice this, you will see, you will feel the difference. Now, we are not saying that you have to spend the rest of your life talking this way. But for the moment, pay attention. And if you wish to use this technique, it can make a profound difference in how you experience yourself. And pay attention to how you say things when using this technique. For again, it is I am that begins the technique always. Not I need this, I want that. For you're automatically making a connection and a projection and an expectational assumption to something and expecting an outcome. It is, I am needing this. I am wanting this. That's who I am. And as soon as that becomes totally who you are, the object itself that you originally may have wanted becomes inconsequential at that moment. Because your moment is full of simply being, I am wanting this idea. Wanting becomes the active principle of who you are, not the object that you originally focused on that separated you from yourself. There is no out there. It's out, in, out, in. Like a mirror, what you see out is what's going on in. That's who you are, who you are. So, practice this idea, and you will actually experience a difference. Sometimes literally a physiological sensation when you become totally in the moment, that your so-called outer reality all of a sudden seems to flatten out, become less solid, less real to you. You become more real all of a sudden. You become the only thing there is at that moment. So practice. See what happens. And remember, as you do so, you are practicing this idea. That's who you are, not a thing you're doing. So thank you for allowing us to present to you once again this idea, for it is critical now that many of you use this technique. It will give you an effect if it is in harmony with the vibration of your preference. At this timing, once again, in return for the gift that you are giving to our civilization and communicating through this link at this rate, we will offer to you.
But let's say good day to you this day of your time. How are you all? All right, thank you. Thank you. Once again for the opportunity to interact with each and every one of you individually and all of you together collectively. We thank you for this gift you are giving to us. Let us begin this transmission with the title, 30 Days of Disclosure. Now, we have talked about recently the idea that there is a protocol list of things that are done when we begin to interact with a new civilization, and we have indicated all the different steps, stages, phases of this, and indicated approximately where you are on this list in terms of what phase is coming up next. So right now, what we are about to suggest as an experiment is part of these protocols, part of accelerating the idea of open contact. And as with many of the protocols on the list, it will involve us observing what it is you do with this and noticing how what you choose to do changes the energy, accelerates the energy. So this experiment is not just about what effect it might have on others, but what effect it has within you, including your willingness to participate in it. So let us begin by asking this question. How many of you would prefer to have disclosure of ET information?